Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
This episode of iPad Pros is brought to you by MagicMind, the world's first productivity drink. Learn more at magicmind.co/iPadPros. And this will take advantage of not just live text, but the document scanning feature that we got, I believe, with iPadOS 13. So system-wide, there's the ability to scan documents, and now the Drafts developers are able to combine that with live text. So it's not giving you that scanned document, but instead ripping that scan, analyzing it with live text, and spitting out the text in a new draft. And it's pretty brilliant. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of iPad Pros. I'm pleased to bring back on the podcast Brian from the Infinite Loopback Podcast. Now that iPadOS 15 has launched and the app updates have started rolling out, we were able to chat about some of the most notable updates that are worth checking out. These are the apps that really take full advantage of the new OS features, and many of them, especially the Safari extensions, have been game-changing for how I use my iPad. Before we get into the episode, I want to first thank MagicMind, a brand new sponsor of the podcast. If you want to support iPad Pros, the best way to do that right now is to head on over to magicmind.co/iPadPros. That's magicmind.co/iPadPros. Use code iPadPros20 to get 20% off your order at MagicMind. I'll be sharing later on in this episode what my experience was with MagicMind and why I think you should give this new drink a shot. My thanks once again to MagicMind for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. As a reminder, you can get episodes early over at patreon.com/iPadPros or by being a paid subscriber on Apple Podcasts. My thanks to everyone that supports the Patreon or through Apple Podcasts. With that, here's my discussion with Brian all about the app updates for iPadOS 15. Enjoy. Welcome back to the podcast, Brian.
Thanks for having me back, Tim. It's good to be back, and it's been a really interesting summer. We've got so much that has come out this summer, and now with iOS 15 finally being released, it's been great times on the iPad.
It has been. And when did we last chat? Was it right when the beta hit or before it? I'm trying to remember the timeline.
I think we last talked right when the beta was just about to come out. So it was right before WWDC. We did the end of May, I believe it was.
Okay. So we were still hoping we'd have a fantastic external display port right about now.
With widescreen support on external displays as well.
We did not get that, but we got some other really nice things. And we're going to chat. So last week, I kind of did a pretty long episode with Matt all about what came out, the OS itself, as well as the hardware. And this week, now that the OS is out, we're going to chat about some really fun stuff that is brand new to both of us. The actual third-party apps that are taking advantage of stuff that we could only theorize over the summer. And there's a lot of cool stuff that's been released so far.
Yeah, why don't we jump into Safari extensions just to get started? So I was really excited about this. Amongst my group of friends, I'm one of the ones that's sort of a Safari diehard. A lot of my friends, even my podcast co-hosts, a lot of them are really into things like Chrome and Edge. But I always feel that the experience on Safari is going to be the better one. And Safari has supported extensions for quite some time, but the gallery is a little bit on the slim side when you go to the Mac App Store. There's not as many as I would have expected them to be. But with the install base of iOS being so much considerably larger than the Mac, I'm really excited about extensions coming to the iOS and iPadOS versions of Safari. So I guess the first one that got everybody's attention was 1Password. Have you had a chance to play with it yet, Tim?
Yes, I am a 1Password user. I have a family account where we have different vaults for me and my wife, and then shared vaults and stuff. And I installed it, this browser extension, and at first glance, okay, iOS does a great job with letting third parties integrate the same way iCloud Keychain does. So why do I need this extension? And then you start using it, and oh boy, it's like on another level. So it's like proactive as well. So without even tapping in passwords fields, you're seeing your stuff in there in really fun and awesome ways. And at times, it helps you also migrate from iCloud Keychain. Earlier today, I was logging into a site that was only in iCloud Keychain. So I did the login thing with iCloud Keychain. Then right after that, the 1Password extension came up and said, hey, do you want to save this to your 1Password? It's like, sure, and let you pick out the vaults right then and there within Safari. It's just a delightful extension. It's mind-boggling how good this is.
It's funny that you mention that, because in my household as well, me and my wife both use 1Password, and it's invaluable. I taught her to use it. She loves it, but I have a lot of things over the years that have accumulated and have got stuck in iCloud keychain. So that feature is also a nice thing to be able to do that, because I have so much duplication between the two. And if you've ever looked on the 1Password forums, people have written some scripts in various ways to go ahead and try to migrate one from the other. But I don't know that I exactly trust that, considering how important those vaults are. So it's crazy to me that I used to think in previous versions of iOS, including up to 14, when you would go to use a password or go to get a password, you would be you'd be prompted to get a login from 1Password, or you'd get a login from iCloud Keychain if you had it there. But just the overall smoothness, the feature, the functionality of having something that pops up that's more like an app instead of just a prompt it's really, really nice. It sort of reminded me of the Mac app, but actually better than the Mac app in a lot of ways, because I've had some issues with, when using it on the Mac, to having it sort of not take over Safari, those obnoxious drop downs that it gives you, and it sort of obscures login and password fields. But on iOS, it's the ideal version of what this should look like. I think theirs is the model that a lot of these browser extensions should look like going forward, where you can almost have a fully functioning app as a Safari extension. And it's great. I mean, the two-factor auth without having to do having to copy it and paste it, right? It's already there. It can do that for you. And you can generate and save passwords into 1Password directly from a web page, which, again, that was my biggest impediment in using it on iPadOS before, would be, it was so much easier because iCloud and Keychain had that functionality built in, right? You go to a web page, you're signing up for an account. iPadOS would automatically generate you a password. You'd save it in Keychain, and that was sort of the utility. But that utility doesn't really exist anymore. So you can, you have no reason not to go all in on 1Password if it's something that you're interested in. And I'm just blown away by it.
Yeah. So for example, right now, I'm on the Mac Rumors forum, and it's telling me if I click into the 1Password. So you can click into the 1Password extension in the menu bar area. When you do that, it will tell you, oh, you have a weak password here. And then so I'm going in to change it, and it'll show up within that new password, like the changing area of new password, and it'll use suggested password right here, and then lets you automatically update your existing, password.
Yes.
Right here, and it's just so good. Because before, with iCloud Keychain, I would often update my password and hit save, and iCloud didn't save it. I don't know what kind of bug happened, but I'd often have these passwords that just didn't update properly. And yeah, it's just every aspect of using passwords in Safari is just better now. You have, as you said, that full app experience. Pretty much if you click into the menu bar, you can navigate through all your passwords and even like other areas of the app, like secure notes and your social security numbers if you need them. Everything's in there. There's also suggestions and for like new generated passwords. And it's just, and then it's, as I said, proactive. It's showing you, there's a 1Password icon within these text boxes that are password boxes. And then other places, it'll just flat out, here's your username and password and stuff, and just does it for you. And I've not installed this yet on my iPhone. It's just only been iPad, but I'm gathering it's just as good on iPhone as well, right?
It is. And I mean, obviously you have a lot less screen real estate to deal with when you're on the iPhone than the iPad. But primarily, it's mostly the same experience. One of the things you just sort of alluded to, too, and having the full version of the app, is that you also get to have access to Watchtower. So you can see at a glance, if your password has been in data leaks on other places, and you're able to actually utilize that from the app as well. So that's also a useful feature. I mean, the best way to get to achieve the not getting hacked, I guess, is the best way to think about it, is to routinely have passwords that aren't just unique, but aren't out there floating around in some sort of data breach. And I use that on the Mac quite a bit, and it existed in the iOS version as well, but it was always one of those things where you accessed 1Password when you needed it, and it may say, hey, you have a compromised password from this website, and you're like, hey, I'll get to that later, and you don't remember to do it. Whereas this, it's a little more in your face, and it's something that you can do. It's a little easier for you to use that, because I don't think anyone just randomly goes into their password manager on a humbug and decides to go through and just change 1,000 passwords in a weekend or something like that. So being able to have that security from the extension as well is just amazing. Like they've really done a good job, and I know that the company that makes 1Password had been sort of had gotten a lot of heat about their Mac app this summer, but I think they've totally redeemed themselves with the Safari extension in iPadOS.
So something I find just an interesting decision with this extension, I don't know if there's a way to modify the behavior of it, is when you go into the extension and you click New Item, it lets you select which item you want to create new, and it pulls up a new Safari tab of that area to create a new item of, rather than the built-in 1Password app.
Right.
Do you have a preference? Do you think this is the right approach, keeping you within Safari? I guess it's great. It's better not yanking you in and out of different places of the system, but at the same time, I like the built-in app as well.
I kind of think that what they're trying to go for is a unified experience across as many platforms as you can have. So it seems like it's sort of mimicking behavior on the other platforms for which it exists.
Do you think the built-in native app will become less important with this extension? I mean,
I absolutely believe it'll be less important. Not less important, but I mean, it'll be more like a back end, because oftentimes, I don't know about you, but when I interface with 1Password in a browser, it's usually I just need to log in really quick, or I'm generating a new login. That's usually my two use cases. Now, occasionally I'll do something like, I have a lot of stuff stored in there from manuals to driver's license to bank account numbers, things like that. And occasionally I will need to, just go into the app and pull that out. But I don't really see it as being something that's going to get a lot of use when you have it in Safari, because more often than not, Safari is where you're mostly going to interact with this. It may be different on the iPad as opposed to, say, something like Mac or Windows or something like that, because...
Or even the phone. I think the phone...
Yeah.
The web experience may not be as robust as... Yeah, I'm looking at the website, and it seems like a pretty nice experience there.
It's pretty incredible the way that this whole thing is they put a lot of thought into this. I'm really impressed with how they've done it. Sometimes it does feel like sort of a, on other platforms, it's like a lowest common denominator type of experience, and it hasn't been the best. But iPadOS and iOS, it has been just phenomenal. I mean, this is the gold standard, I think, of how extensions should work. Give you as much functionality of the app itself without actually having to go to the app itself if you don't want to.
The dealing with passwords thing is now, you could argue before 1Password or iCloud Keychain as far as the Safari experience. Now, iCloud is seems like a secondary experience to 1Password's providing here.
It kind of is, but in Monterey, we're going to be getting a password manager that's built into macOS as well. So, and that's some of that stuff I understand may be accessible through Windows as well. So it looks like, they're not being Sherlocked so much as I think they're being forced to innovate and stay ahead of things. And I think if they continue to provide the superior experience, because iCloud Keychain is one of those things that's been there forever, but it's absolutely horrible to use on every platform that you use it on. Like, I don't want to have to go into the settings under Safari or passwords or whatever and look for a password.
Where you can't even split screen the settings app.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then, oftentimes it depends if you've reset a password and you didn't get your email address in there, and, maybe it only captured the password or whatever it was. It's iCloud Keychain is a mess. It's always been sort of a mess. And this provides a much smoother experience. And I'm really hopeful that they will continue to provide a better experience than what you'll have found in the Monterey password manager, or if that comes to iPadOS. I mean, right now it still seems as the same as it ever was, but as I understand going forward, since they're doing that on the desktop, I'd be very surprised if they didn't try to compete with 1Password inside of iPadOS as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's 1Password. It's incredible, and Yeah, I'm not sure. I forget the pricing model. I am a family member, a subscriber, and then I know there's individual. Do you know what that starts at for people that want to get into 1Password?
I think it's like $35 a year or something like that. It's really low. I know. I think I may use just the individual, and my wife and I use like a single vault or something like that. And I think families maybe 50 or something like that. I'm pretty sure that the individual account though is about $35 a year because it's next to nothing, and you get a very, very functional app. And the thing is, I don't remember a price increase in the whole time that I've been using it, and that's probably 10 or 11 years at this point. I mean, it's just been this reliable thing, and very, very economical, I think.
Yeah. So the next one I want to chat about is, I think just very briefly, OneBlocker. This is a service that I subscribe to /app to help me not be tracked as much. And their extension is one I need to figure out a way to disable selectively because their extension basically gives you the YouTube Premium experience without paying for YouTube Premium on iOS. They figured out a way to block YouTube ads within this extension that you never ever see. It's just kind of working in the background, and
that's pretty slick.
It's kind of cool. But yeah, I also need to disable it for people that I like.
and that's something that's been around for iOS and iPadOS for a good while, but now that it's finally into an actual extension, what's the experience like with that? Because I used to use OneBlocker back in the day. I think I bought it back when it was a 4-pay app, and then when they went free, I don't think I ever subscribed to it. I pursued other ways to do ad blocking, but I am curious how that experience is as an extension.
Yeah, the reason I subscribed to it was their in-app tracker thing that they rolled out. They basically have a firewall that like stops apps from like sending stuff around your iPad to let them know, hey, you're using this app and also this app, and say this whole firewall system. But the actual extension, as I said, it's invisible, so you don't really see it. You do enable it, and once you enable it, then every time you go to YouTube, it'll just not show you video ads anymore. And this is something new. It's called OneBlocker Scripts. And before, it could just block, ads that are the just imagery ads, things like that. But now they have this way of blocking video ads within YouTube, which, I don't know. It's a weird thing because, YouTube people, I don't really want to block most of their ads unless it's like the Wall Street Journal where I don't care because they have so much revenue.
Right.
But, I need to figure out a way to selectively enable that for different creators, I guess. I don't know.
I may have to go take a look at that again because that does sound interesting. I mean, as we discussed on the last show, I've been running sort of like a Pi hole on a Raspberry Pi that I VPN back to my house and do it that way. And that works pretty well, but being able to do things on a granular app basis would be very, very useful. And if they could figure out how to block ads inside of, say, Twitter with a native client instead of having to use Tweetbot or something like that, I would subscribe tomorrow, I do believe.
Yeah. But it's an interesting example of there are extensions that you never see, and it's a new ability with this extension framework allows, but some of them, they're just completely invisible. Like there are some that will just not show you the cookies anymore. So when you go to a site that is always asking your permission to accept the cookies.
Right. Was that Hush? Has that been ported as a full-blown extension now?
Hush is out, and I played around with it, and I couldn't figure out how to get that to actually work yet. I don't know. So I'm still actually trying to hunt down for the best cookie asking thing out there, and that I'm not sure if there's a really great one for that yet. I know there's one in beta that was mentioned on Connected last week. But yeah, so that stuff is coming at some point soon. The other one I've really been just really loving is Noir, Noir, and this is the dark mode in Safari extension that I've chosen. There's a bunch of these things out.
I gotta agree with you right on that one. I mean, my eyes just seem to be getting worse every year, and whenever I read things on the Kindle app or iBooks, it's always white text on a black screen. It's just so much easier on my eyes, no matter day, night, whatever. I much prefer that. So being able to turn Safari into night mode is just that is a super useful extension.
Yeah, and it lets you be very selective about how it behaves. So if a website already has a dark mode, it'll not try to do anything custom with it. And already today or yesterday, they rolled out an update. So this app launched when iPadOS 15 launched, and within the week, they have a brand new update that lets you change from the default theme of dark to black. So if you have an OLED or one of those mini LED iPad Pros, that just looks phenomenal having a pure black screen. So yeah, they are pushing out updates already, and it's just a really good experience being able to go to pretty much any website and have it display properly, or not display properly, but display in dark mode. So you're not lighting up a huge, bright white screen in the middle of the night when you're trying to get stuff done.
I would also wonder if that would make the battery last a little bit longer, just because it doesn't really require as much output for, a dark background like that.
Yeah, I'd imagine it definitely would for OLED models of phones, and then the mini LEDs for iPad Pros. I have to imagine that would. It's amazing watching the Verge video reviews this week of the iPhone, and they have some shots that are just like Dieter in front of a pure black background. And those things just look so good on this iPad. Just reminded me. There's some instances where it just reminds you when there's just like a person over a black background, how good this thing can look.
Yeah, even months in, this thing is fantastic. Let's see. So one of the ones that I wanted to mention was a little app called Amplosion. Well, an extension called Amplosion.
Yeah.
And all of us have had that experience where you go to Google, and me and my friends, we share articles with each other all the time. And I hate sharing those garbage Google AMP URLs, which are 10,000 lines and special characters long. Plus, if a site is dependent on revenue, if they want to see hits, that we don't want to hit Google's cache for it. We want to hit the site itself for the the person who's doing it. Google Cache is great if the site's down or something, but if you want to help actual independent creators or even larger organizations, you don't really want to use that. So. Not to mention the fact that URLs are much cleaner when you're using something other than the Google AMP link. So this is an extension that will let you go to the real site. And again, it's not world altering, right? It's no 1Password, but it's a utility. It does it really well, and you can't really go wrong with it. I love little things that are single purpose like that. I love, hey, we're just an extension that does this one little thing, and now all of a sudden, you can't live without it. Because before I would go to the AMP site, and then I have to hit the tiny tap target of go to the real site, and it was just a pain. So it removed a couple of clicks easily. So that's nice.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm not someone that has that issue because I use DuckDuckGo for all my searches.
I need to go back to DuckDuckGo. I guess if I went back and did that, it would be fine. I was using DuckDuckGo for the longest time, and some of the results I was getting, I don't know. It's a fine search engine, but they're just time. Google's the leader for a reason sometimes. And
I'm not a huge searcher in general, I must say. Most of the time, the Siri search that I end up getting tends to work out pretty good, and I tend to just do the first thing that I'm getting from Spotlight a lot of times. Yeah, I do the same thing for a lot of that, but and again, a lot of times that's Google on the back end for the results on the Siri search, right? Or is that the system-wide default doesn't actually change the Siri searches, right? Or does it do that? I thought Apple was doing their own search outside of what the search engines were was separate, but I might be mistaken.
Let's see. So another extension I've been playing with is Vidimote for Safari.
I've been curious about this one. It's been on my list of ones to potentially purchase myself.
So the only thing for me, I signed up for YouTube Premium back when it was still YouTube Red and before they raised the prices. So I'm grandfathered in on like a much lower tier than I think what it goes for today. So for me, the use case would be something where I could use YouTube if I ever decided to get rid of that. But there's a lot of places that you go and you'll watch videos that are embedded on a site that aren't YouTube. And being able to go and do that, there's all sorts of YouTube competitors and wannabes that are out there that are starting to spring up. And being able to watch videos at higher speed is a godsend. So one of the things that I've done for most of the videos that I watch, it's very rare that I watch a video at normal speed. If it's something that I'm interested in, I usually do at least 1 1/4 or something like that. And this allows you to go up to 2x on just about any video. But obviously you're gonna watch it in Safari to be able to make that happen. So if it's a dedicated app, maybe the utility may not be as useful to you if you wanted to use it that way. But if you're fine of using things inside of Safari, then you're good to go.
And what's the control look like for that? Because you can also like skip 15 seconds forward and back. Like, what other controls does this provide you?
Well, other than playback, I haven't used any other control for that. So that's the that's the only way that I've actually used it in. I mean, you can do full screen and picture, but again, that's really more of a function of being able to watch stuff in picture anyway. So honestly, I've only used the changing the speed, but I think it's like 10 forward and like 10 back, something like that. It's not really a what am I trying to say here? I'm actually having to go and look again to see, because I was using it earlier today. Jump 10 and forward and backwards is actual time remaining, live stream clock, but speed is really just the thing, which is adjustable in increments of like 5% or something like that.
Okay. So next for me is Grammarly, and this is the first extension that I actually installed. And I saw this was out. This was out before iPadOS 15 launched on, I think, like the Friday before or something. And it's kind of an interesting thing. I don't have this turned on all the time. So the cool thing is you can click on the little puzzle piece and selectively turn your extensions on and off kind of at will. And I do that for Grammarly because I think it's a little creepy to have Grammarly just looking at every single thing I'm typing into Safari.
Yes.
So I turn that off most of the time. But when I want to turn it on, it's very useful. And when I'm doing some writing, it's a cool thing to have. So say you're writing a forum post on, that big block of text, or in your WordPress or something like that. You can turn this on, and it'll be looking at your, paragraph and underlying things in red when things are coming up in its grammar check. And I just have the free Grammarly account. I'm not paying for anything, and it's just the free account. And it'll underline things, and it'll give you suggestions of what to change it to. So if I click on this here, it says unknown word, because I just put a couple characters together that aren't a word, and I can dismiss it. And then I have one that's suggesting me to change it from R to is, and I can tap on the is, and it changes that right then and there. So it's just a really good use of being able to, kind of go into what you're actually doing writing-wise and checking your grammar on it. And this is something that before you would have to use a, third-party keyboard to, check grammar within there, I believe was one of the ways they did it. And then they have an app as well that I would copy all my text into there as a final check and then paste it back. And just so much more elegant having everything within just your web browser here.
Yeah, I had wanted to check that out. So that was, I have sort of the same sort of icky feeling about leaving an extension on that watches, and that sort of brings me to Honey, which was another one that I'd planned on using. I've played with that on the Mac a little bit, because it is good for being able to find, good deals, but at the same time, it's like they're monetizing every single search that I do. That's a little... So anything, yeah. I see what you're saying too with being able to turn, and you can turn these things on and off. Right? That's the
right from the menu bar, and you can also do it on a website per website basis.
That's even better.
So I have this option here: check for writing suggestions on X website I'm on, and I can turn that off right there once I'm on it. So as you're browsing the web, you can kind of go through and change it, and it. For example, it doesn't check my spelling in 1Password. I was looking at the extension, and it's not doing anything there. It's not supported in that website. So some websites, it's not actually going to work, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Like 1Password's website, you wouldn't want it to work on. You wouldn't want that transmitted or anything. But,
yeah.
And when you go to the Safari extensions on the App Store, it's still sort of. I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot of more than what we would ever have time to cover. But there's still very small utilities, and they're not. There's not a lot of. There's not as many as you would expect. I want to see this.
There's a lot of shared utilities. A lot of developers tackling the same problem, and something. If you don't know. You can actually find all these extensions in one place by opening the App Store, the Apps tab, that middle tab, scrolling to the very bottom, and then there's this top categories thing at the very bottom. And right now, Safari extensions is the top category. This is a boon for developers because this is a new feature. And then when you click into that category, there's this wonderful kind of page all about Safari extensions where you can look at the top paid, top free, and then these different categories of extensions, which is great.
Yeah, it's funny to me how Safari has been around forever. Extensions on the desktop have been around forever, but I think now this is the means by which extensions are actually going to come into popular use, are going to be through iPadOS and iOS, just because there's so many more users than there are on the Mac. So I'm really excited about this. And even the little for-pay extensions are really, as long as it provides a useful utility, I will download a $2.99 or a $4.99 extension off the App Store without even hardly a second thought, just because I want to see what they're able to do to extend this functionality of Safari. The experience of using a browser on iPadOS has always felt like slightly lesser than desktop experiences, and I think this is going to be one of those things that really sort of brings it into desktop class, because that was one of the things that were truly missing. I myself, because I was a big Safari user on the Mac, didn't depend on a lot of extensions, but I know so many people who are Chrome and Edge and users of those alternate browsers who depend on those sort of things. The first thing they do when they get a system is they go and they get all these plugins. Well, now Safari has actually, for iPadOS, has actually entered that, and it's another way that it's becoming much more of a desktop experience while not compromising what we like about iPadOS.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The Mac extensions are going to be so much better now because there's a market for this, and developers, I think, are going to make a lot of money with extensions, which I'm not sure do developers make money with Chrome extensions, or is it mostly a free market over there?
I think it's mostly a free market over there from what I've seen. I mean, it's going to be, you're going to have to have paid for an app and then use the corresponding extension. So no real different than, like, say, 1Password or something like that, And the ones that are free that don't have a corresponding business model, those are the ones I really sort of start to wonder about, because, again, it's like, well, you're not going to do this out of the goodness of your heart. You have to have some reason to be developing this. So how are you monetizing?
Yeah.
So
I mean, a couple of those are probably developers doing it for fun in their spare time. They just out of curiosity. But yeah, some of those you got to be wondering about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because you do grant permission when you install an extension. Yeah, let it have access to all the sites or just this one I'm on. And generally speaking, you select it all. Otherwise, what's the point,
Though on iPadOS, with Apple's sort of policy, you would hope that at least some of those would be less creepy. But as long as you consent to this stuff and you know what you're getting into, I guess to each their own.
Yeah, one of the cool ones that I've not gotten because it's a $30 application is Language Translator by Mate. This is an application. It's a full-featured application that kind of rivals the new Translate app for iPad. And they have an extension where provides a very rich translating experience within Safari. So you can highlight a word and it gives you this wonderful overlay of different translations with the ability to copy the different translations, as well as hear what it sounds like right within Safari. And then on the bottom of web pages, there's this big translate button where you can translate entire web pages. And it just seems like a really well done option for those that have this need. It's something I don't currently need.
Me neither. I do worry about something like the translation features that are built into iPadOS 15 being something that would make that sort of easily Sherlocked at some point. So I hope that developer can get all he can for it as long as he can until that day comes, because I would feel that's something that's got to be imminent on the horizon at some point.
Do you think Apple will start building extensions themselves?
I don't think they'll build extensions so much as I think they will just take that functionality and roll it into Safari in the same way that, like, Reading List or one of those are. Remember Instapaper used to be the big thing, and then you don't really see people using a lot of read later apps because of the ability to have the read later stuff directly from the browser. We'll talk about it in a moment, but the notes feature where you can highlight text inside of a quick note, and you can make a quick note out of that, and then when you come back into the quick note, it'll go back to the web page and display the text highlighted. That's I'm of two minds on this, because I'm old enough to remember when Microsoft used to do this sort of thing where they would take functionality and roll it into the OS, and then they would drive entire business models out just because they would do the same thing. And Apple has been sort of notorious for that too, but when you're able to integrate it at the system level, you can do things that that extensions aren't even the best fit for. So I do wonder about that. I do wonder if certain things like that, where they've expressly done something, like the translation was a big thing at WWDC that they focused on. So I would have to think, it's not going to be confined to an app much longer. It's going to, at some point, maybe it's iOS 16 or 17, it'll probably be something like where, you can right click and translate, or just,
so you can already do this within Safari. So I can highlight a word, I can then tap translate, and then it will give me whatever language I chose. I can actually play that audio. I can replace that text I highlighted with the translation, and I can open then and translate the app. It appears that a lot of that functionality that I just saw is integrated into the system already, but perhaps they have a pro level area where this built-in stuff doesn't cover.
Yeah, you would have to think, when you can do onesie twosies type things like that and do translate, that it's got to be imminent for the browser in some future release.
Yeah, I would be curious to see, extensions by Apple. Like, they make apps, and I'd be curious to see if they have any cool ideas for extensions in the future.
There are certain things where they'll create something and then not enter into that at all, whether it's, making, HomeKit, but making 0 devices that are actually for HomeKit. You know what I mean? Where they'll create this thing and then just the count on the development community to use it. I would love to see them do it, because knowing Apple, they would probably have access to private APIs that they wouldn't give the rest of us, so they could really do some neat stuff.
Yeah. The other one, we mentioned search a while ago. Keyword search is a really amazing extension. This is totally free. I heard about this in 6 Colors. Dan Morin is a fan of this one, and this is a brilliant one. This is where, so when you're in Safari, you can in the URL bar type like I- and then a space, and then it'll search. I have mine set up for IMDb, and let me make sure that syntax is right. It might be -I, but there's one for Amazon, so you can type a dash, and then whatever product you're looking for. So it saves you a lot of time in just searching where you want to be searching.
I'll have to look at that, because that's something that I think the iPad has needed. Honestly, I would have loved to have seen the same. I would love to see something like Alfred from the Mac be able to exist inside of iPadOS, because I do so many things with Alfred. But that's one of the things you can do with Alfred as well, is have shortcuts that'll automatically search Amazon, Google, whatever you want to search it up for. So I need to get that one. I think that would be that'd be pretty slick. I like that.
Yeah. So I just tried it. I forgot. There is no dash involved. You just type E space and then whatever you want from eBay, and it'll search eBay. You type A space whatever you want from Amazon. And, there's one for YouTube. You can add custom ones if you want. For custom ones, you basically add a URL bar that is their search bar in some way. But by default, there's Amazon, archive.org, the Wayback Machine, DuckDuckGo, eBay, Google Images, Google Maps, IMDb, Wikipedia, Wolfram Alpha, YouTube. Pretty awesome.
And for a lot of people listening, I know anybody that would be listening to this show is probably not intimidated by that at all. And some people may wonder, why would you want to do that when it just saves you like this little amount of time? But when you start getting used to it, those shortcuts become very, very powerful. If you know where you're going, 10 seconds here, 20 seconds there, that stuff adds up over time, right? I mean, having the ability to have this customization that has existed on the desktop for a while, but still have it in a way that doesn't compromise what iPadOS is, I'm all for it. I'm hoping more people do stuff like that, because that is great.
Yeah, and these Safari extensions, this is just wave 1, and there's some really cool stuff already out, and it makes me think third-party web browsers. I don't know why you'd use a different browser at this point with this ability within Safari now.
Yeah, and plus, since they all use the same rendering engine on the back end per Apple's mandate, then you're really better off just using Safari. The only people that I know that use things like Chrome or Edge or Firefox or whatever on an iOS device, it's just for tab and bookmark synchronization across multiple devices. I
have to wonder, Could you do an extension, like a Chrome extension within Safari for syncing bookmarks or tabs?
Yeah.
Could you sync tabs through an extension?
You would have to think that that's just data that could be stored, and
yeah.
I would be surprised if we don't see that at some point.
Yeah, I think Firefox already has an extension for Safari, which is just great. I'm not sure if Google would ever do this. It's called Firefox Focus, that extension. I'm not quite sure what it does. I think it's like a blocking of ads and stuff.
I remember hearing about that, but I do use Firefox on the Mac, but seldom. I don't use anything other than Safari on iPadOS or iOS.
Yeah. So any other extensions you want to chat about?
No, I think that's all I've had a chance to play with yet. I have gone through the App Store looking for things, and I do see a lot of these little utilities that are sort of single one-off. And as you said, there are a lot of developers that are trying to do attacking the same problem. So you do have a lot of duplicates in some cases. But I'm going to watch this with a lot of attention to see where this goes, because again, we've seen great examples of it. So
yeah. The final one I just want to mention quickly is GoodLinks. This is a really great alternative to the reading list in Safari. And their new extension, when you tap it, it lets you be much more detailed about what you're adding. So you can add tags when you're adding a link. You can title it. You can add a summary to it. You can mark it as read or add to the starred list right there within this extension, and it basically acts as a little pop-up window within Safari. So within the current page, you're not yanked out of anything, but just a little overlay, and pretty nice.
I take that back. There is an extension that I do want to see get created that doesn't exist in iPadOS, but does exist on macOS, and that is Paprika 3. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a recipe app, and I've used this for a long time. And if you pay for the app, they give you this ability. Now, it does exist on iPadOS. You can go in and you can go to a web page that has a recipe, for example, and you can, with a couple of clicks, it'll go through and save it so that you can have it offline. It's a printable PDF, and they do a lot of parsing to make sure that whatever is there is, they get rid of a lot of cruft if there was ads and other stuff in there that you don't need, and make it sort of very streamlined, and you can have a library within the Paprika 3 app to be able to do that. The way that it works on iPadOS right now is the way that a lot of apps have worked, where there was no extension capability before, where it opens up its own instance of Safari from within the app, and then from there it can do what it needs to do. But now that extensions exist, I'm really hopeful that they end up taking advantage of that, because it is something that I've used quite a bit. I love cooking, and I do that quite a bit, and I'm always looking for new and interesting things to make. So I've compiled a big library within this app over time, and it would just be nice to be able to do that straight from Safari and iPadOS, just like I do it on macOS.
Gotcha. Yeah, very cool. And I hope that sounds great if they could do that. I was just looking as you were chatting there to see if Evernote had their extension available yet, and it doesn't seem like they do. So Evernote back in the day would be one of those that I just imagine would be their day one with this amazing extension, same way 1Password was, because their Mac extension back in the day, I remember being really well done.
Oh yeah. I used to use. And I think we'll talk about that too when we get to quick notes. I've been a diehard Evernote user for years, and even now I'm starting to see, well, maybe I don't need to be necessarily anymore, which I think is all the more reason they should have had something out day one, right? Give those people that are still paying for the premium subscription a reason to keep doing that, and it just seems like a no-brainer. It's existed on the Mac forever, so having the ability to do that from within iPadOS would just be icing on the cake.
This episode of iPad Pros is sponsored by MagicMind, the world's first productivity drink. Here's what I experienced after trying MagicMind for the first time. For those that don't know, I once weighed 100 pounds more than I do today, and I've been on a health journey since 2015 learning what and what doesn't work for me. I'm someone that practices time-restricted feeding as well as quarterly extended multi-day water fasts. I mention this because the remarkable thing about MagicMind is the kind of focus and clean, steady energy I felt after drinking MagicMind was a similar sensation from what I experienced in the later phases of an extended multi-day fast. For those that haven't experienced this, When you fully transition out of sugar burning mode and start burning fat for energy, your energy becomes super stable and your mind has a degree of clarity that is hard to describe. Your ability to think problems out becomes something you have endless energy for. And MagicMind provided this kind of incredible sensation simply by being the first thing I drank when I woke up. Everybody does a little fasting simply by going to bed. And by drinking MagicMind when you wake up and are ready to get some work done, you can get some of your most productive hours simply by drinking MagicMind. The taste of MagicMind is a mixture of sweetness and bitterness. It uses a matcha tea as its base and packs in a bunch of incredible ingredients that include adaptogens and nootropics like lion's mane mushrooms. I drink it as a sipping drink like many would espresso. Others take it as a shot, and you can also mix it up with milk to make a latte out of it. So if you're trying to get into that productive zone and for whatever reason find yourself procrastinating, give MagicMind a shot. Beyond apps, MagicMind should also become an important part of your productivity workflow. Learn more at magicmind.co/iPadPros and get 20% off your order by using the code iPadPros20. That's iPadPros20. And head on over to magicmind.co/iPadPros and make sure to use that code iPadPros20 to get 20% off your order. Give MagicMind a try today to boost your productivity to the next level and get into the productivity flow quicker and easier. My thanks to MagicMind for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros. So let's jump to live text. There's a couple apps that kind of integrate directly with this. This is the feature where if you have an A12 Bionic or newer chip, that you can do live text. So I believe that's the iPad 8th generation or later. So not the one that just came up, the one before, I think will do it. And then, A12 devices. So I'm not sure how far back that goes with the iPad stuff. I might go look at that right now. But it's been a couple years. And you can access this just via the camera app. And when you're in the camera, there will be the little 3 lines at the bottom. And it'll pause what you're looking at and just not even take a photo, but just kind of pause it so you can select the text and click on phone numbers and stuff. But apps can also directly integrate with this. And one of the first ones that updated with this was Parcel. Basically how this works is, say there's a tracking number. So you have this like long 16-digit number in front of you, or it's not scanning the barcode. It's instead using live text when you're scanning, say, a receipt with the tracking number on there, and it'll find that tracking number and automatically input that there, so you're not typing this code out to get it into your deliveries app, which is really, really smart.
You know, I was not familiar with that app. That is extremely cool. I'm going to have to go take a look at that myself. I've been using the deliveries app forever by JuneCloud, and I don't know that they've updated to take advantage of that or not. I will say that I have noticed that if I do take a picture of something, you know, being able to select and copy that directly from a photo has just been a game changer. I mean, that's been one of the best things that I've seen in this, because it seems to apply for things where even in apps where I wasn't able to select text before, I'm able to select it now. It seems like it's just been really, really nice. I did go and take a look for those that are listening that are wondering about the A12 Bionic. It's the iPhone XS and XS Max, XR, iPad Mini, the 5th generation, iPad Air 3rd generation, the iPad that came out last year, as you alluded to, the 8th generation, and the Apple TV 4K, which that wouldn't be applicable here, but...
Yeah, very cool. So, yeah, 10. Okay, cool. 10.
Sorry, I didn't mean to...
No, that's great. Yeah, so Air 2 is like... That was the breakthrough one that lasted, and now it's been cut off.
Yep. Yeah. iPad Air 3rd generation, and... I guess is that the most recent one? I haven't bought an iPad Air in many, many years.
I think we're on the 4th generation iPad Air, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably mistaken, though. Let me pull up. I can pull up MacTrack.
Yeah, that was a 2019 release, it looks like, for the iPad Air 3, and it was discontinued in the fall of last year. So yeah, it was the iPad Airs that came out last year, 2020, I guess, the 4th generation.
Yeah, cool. And then the iPad Mini 5 was based off of that iPad Air, I believe. If memories, yeah, because they're kind of Mini is the sibling to the Air at this point. And then Drafts is another really cool use of live text. So there's this new ability to tap and hold on the plus icon and select scan documents. And this will take advantage of not just live text, but the document scanning feature that we got, I believe, with iPadOS 13. So system-wide, there's the ability to scan documents, and now the Drafts developers are able to combine that with live text. So it's not giving you that scanned document, but instead ripping that scan, analyzing it with live text, and spitting out the text in a new draft. And it's pretty brilliant how it kind of combines two technologies in one go,
I really need to get back into drafts as well. It's one of those things that I used to use. A few years back, there was sort of this editor wave where you had things like IA Writer, and you had drafts, and you had Bear, and what was the other one that I was thinking of? There was another one that came out that was just called Writer, I think it was. It wasn't the IA one. So, man, I was on all of those. I got all of them, bought all of them, and I don't know why drafts sort of dropped out of the regular use for me, because I do remember liking it. But I have my podcast co-host swears by the Apple Watch integration with that as well, saying that being able to take quick notes from that has been something that's been super useful to him. So the fact that you can do the scanning, and I've got to give that another look.
Yeah, it's super well done, and yeah, their Apple Watch app, it's great, and yeah, it's just a well done app for sure.
Are there any other apps that have taken advantage of the live text stuff? I mean, I've mostly been relying on the camera that's built into the iPad to be able to do stuff, or the iPhone, and do it that way. So are there any others?
Those have been the big two that I've seen. I believe Lookup will be supporting this, or already does. But those, yeah, there's not a ton that are like doing special integrations with live text. So these have been the big two, yeah.
I was afraid that it was just like, is anyone using this other than the way that I'm using it? But that's good to know. At least those are out there.
Yeah, and I'll look up as we're talking here, see if the App Store is highlighting other uses of live text I'm forgetting. But I want to dive into widgets. Extra large widgets are now on iPad, as well as regular size widgets. So what's your widget experience been like now that they're on iPad?
Unfortunately, a lot of the apps that I've used have not embraced the XL widgets, which I think is kind of a shame. But the two that I've used that I really like are Fantastical and Cardhop. Fantastical, I mean, just being able to have the month view and then also have a list of daily tasks, because I use Fantastical. I also use Todoist, which does not have an XL widget right now, but I also integrate my Todoist account into Fantastical. So it's all sort of one big clearinghouse for the things that I do. I might use Siri on a HomePod or an iPhone or an Apple Watch to add a reminder, and use Fantastical to automatically import those in. And I may decide to go and, create lists inside of Todoist, which I used to do for work quite frequently. And having that one clearinghouse of being able to see things is really nice. And something like that really lends itself to the XL widget, because you can also get your month at a glance, and you can also switch to different days without having to go fully into the app, which is also nice. Cardhop, which I know you're a Cardhop user as well, just being able to have multiple contacts that are out there is really nice.
Yeah.
So I frequently only communicate with, on a regular basis, certain people over and over and over. So being able to go in and just a couple of taps and you're in there is nice.
Yeah, and the Cardhop widget, their extra large one,
I think it's 6 people or something on it.
Well, their extra large one is only for birthdays. And this is a really brilliant thing for me, at least. So it'll list out 12 people. It'll show you your next 12 birthdays coming up. It pulls this data from Cardhop, which I have a bunch of birthday data because back in the day it integrated with Facebook. So I have that data.
You did the same thing that I did. So yeah, that's a weird thing too, because inside of Fantastical, I've had that forever, where I go in and I'll open up my calendar and I'll see friends' birthdays, and it'll tell me exactly how old they are. And I'm like, how do I know this information? I didn't go in and put this and then I remember, yeah, Facebook back in the day used to do that. So
yep. So yeah, it'll tell me the next 12 birthdays. If it has the year of the birthday, it'll tell me how old they'll be. Super handy, because I'm constantly forgetting birthdays, and this is an issue I have. It also just the math of like, okay, that's the year. How old are they actually going to be? So it solves a real, problem in my life of just forgetting birthdays, and seeing the next 12 is a good amount of people. Like you can covers a couple months at sometimes of the year,
Yeah, absolutely.
For those that are curious about how do I find which widgets actually support extra large, so the easiest way I've found to do this is just find one extra large widget. I believe the built-in podcast app has an extra large widget. If you add that to your home screen, and then if you tap and hold and you edit the widget, you first need to make a stack. So you find 2 extra large widgets and make a stack out of them. And once you have a stack, from there, you can then do something pretty cool of editing a stack. And when you edit a stack, you can then hit a plus button there. And it's only going to show you the extra large widgets now, because that's all you can add to an extra large stack. So that'll show you everything you have installed on your system for finding that. So I see one for Spark, which is a pretty cool widget where it shows me the inbox as well as my calendar. So that's a pretty nifty integration there of both of that kind of data points there. So that's a really good way to see what is available for you. And it will kind of filter out on the sidebar there of what apps actually let you do this.
That's a handy little trick you've learned there too. And then Spark is one that I should have thought about as a widget. Most of my email, it feels like these days, is just ads. So even though I'm a Spark user on every device that I have, that was one that I didn't think to actually go and create a widget for, because my email has been not so interesting in the last few months. So I think I'm gonna have to go and take a look at that as well. That is fantastic. Read'll make some great apps. So.
Yeah, and within the widget, you can change from the message category from the inbox, notification, news, or people. You can use the unified inbox or just change it to one of them. And for the calendars, you can do all calendars or change it to just maybe you just want to show the holidays. You can just have the holiday calendar show. Like it's. And the ability to tweak these is pretty nice.
Man, I'm going to kick myself for not thinking of using the Spark XL widget.
And Carrot is another just great XL widget. If you're a user of Carrot, the Fantastic Weather app, that is a great one. And it's kind of encouraged me to upgrade my subscription to the top one versus the middle one that I'm at now, because that's where you get the weather maps in the widget, which would be pretty nice.
Carrot is one. I've always been a Dark Sky user. Me and my co-hosts on my podcast talk about this a lot. They're all Carrot users. And I'm like the lone Dark Sky holdout over here. So, and since Apple acquired Dark Sky, I think I need to go take a look at doing Carrot. I know Carrot used to get their API info on the back end from Dark Sky, but I know that's going away. But again, since the iPad doesn't have a weather app, that's kind of a glaring omission that Carrot seems to fill in pretty nice.
Yeah, and then that's just another suggestion. Just look at the things you can edit in widgets. So, for example, in the Cardhop one I just mentioned, I just discovered you can actually change it to, instead of showing the date, show a countdown. So I can see, there's 32 days until X person's birthday, or 3 days. And that's just a fun little countdown to see. And you can also change it to only show certain groups. So if you only want to see, say, your family's birthdays, you can edit the Cardhop widget to just show that group. And that's pretty cool.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's nice.
And then as far as other widgets, Carrot is kind of like a go-to one for me. And as far as widgets in general, are you using some good non-extra large ones that you're finding useful on iPad?
I haven't had a lot of the apps that I depend on actually provide XL widgets. And that's kind of surprising, but not really. I mean, since this is a thing that's somewhat new, I have a feeling that's going to go on and get better, but I mean, just using standard medium-sized widgets, things like Telegram is one that I depend on a lot. The Apple Music one I depend on a lot. The battery status apps. My home screen right now is completely littered with little utilities like that. But those are the ones that I primarily depend on the most. I mean, some of the apps that I depend on still haven't updated to stop using the old-style widgets to actually start using the modern widgets. So that's also kind of a frustration.
Yeah. It does look like WidgetSmith now has extra large widgets. I thought this wasn't happening because of what I've heard on his podcast about it. But it looks like he did actually figure that out, and it's available if you'd like to play around with that.
WidgetSmith, that's also a great app that we should probably have mentioned as well. I'm sure most people know about that are listening to this podcast. I mean, that app blew up when iOS 14 was released. So a year ago.
Yeah, and I'm adding one right now, and they're nice and big. I've got this sun kind of solar widget that kind of tells me where the sun is and the as far as when is solar noon and stuff. And
have the widgets changed the way that you primarily use your iPad? Because I know they have for me.
Yeah, they really have. As talked about in the last episode, the focus modes combined with widgets really changed, my relationship with apps and app icons, and I'm using mostly widgets with just a couple app icons on the home screens now.
I think the app library, too, is also a sort of a thing that was sorely missed on the iPad after showing up on the iPhone first. And being able to install apps directly to the app library without having to put them on the home screen and then, delete them and just send the app library is really, really sort of changed the layout of what my iPad looks like. Before, it was sort of mimicking the iPhone aesthetic, where you would have just folders or pages worth of stuff. But now, being able to get all of that data at a glance from the home screen through widgets and keeping things that I don't frequently use enough straight in the app library has been great. Let alone what we're able to do now with focus mode. So it doesn't feel so much like a large iPhone anymore, even though you can do the widgets on the iPhone, obviously, but it doesn't feel like that large iPhone anymore. The being able to get your data just from a glance has been sort of a game changer with this.
Yeah, and evidently you can have different widget layouts if you're in landscape or vertical mode, portrait mode, which blows my mind. You can actually move your widgets around, and it doesn't mirror it on both places. You can change that to match whatever you want.
Do most people use the something like the iPad Pro? I mean, obviously, when we're talking about the iPad, there's so many form factors and so many sizes. I should be getting a mini this week for my wife, and I planned on seeing how the widget layout goes on that compared to what I've had on the 12.9-inch Pro. And she primarily uses her iPad in portrait mode for most of the stuff that she's doing. I'm primarily using mine in landscape mode because most of the time it's hooked to my Magic Keyboard unless I'm doing some reading or something like that. So I'm curious, since I'm her IT guy, as I'm setting sort of this stuff up and trying to get her to adopt some of these technologies, how those larger widgets look on the iPad Mini. That's one thing that I haven't done on her 4th gen, but I will be doing on the. Well, wait a minute. No, she has a 5th gen, and then we'll be getting the 6th.
Yeah, I mean, I use it to combine both ways more often in landscape, I would say, though.
Yeah, I think giving you have more real estate to work with, and it's more computer-like in that way, right? You get access to more information. If I'm using something where I'm doing it in portrait mode, though, it would change things completely for me. I'm a tinkerer with that stuff, and I cannot get things exactly the way. I don't know. It takes me a long time to come up with a way I'm exactly happy with it.
Yeah, the iPad Mini seems more of a portrait-first device, so that'd be fun to play around with. And the final XL widget I just saw here is Parcel. We talked about that earlier, and it'll show you a map and kind of the status of your delivery there and the nice big size. And so I'm sure more of these will come out as the updates come out, but a lot from the makers of Cardhop and Fantastical. That's one developer there who does great work. Yeah,
I've been a long-time Fantastical user and subscriber, and that product just keeps getting better and better and better and better.
So we did live text, extra large widgets, and widgets in general. The last category, quick notes, is a fun one. This is something I'm still wrapping my head around, especially since we have third-party apps out, and how best to use this ability. So within Quick Notes, which you can summon with Globe Q, or by dragging the Apple Pencil or your finger from the bottom right, or in Control Center, all the ways to trigger this thing. And when you do that, and on your screen is something that Quick Notes can link to, there is a button that says, add link to, Pcalc or Safari. Or if you're in split screen, it'll give you an option to pick which one you want to link to. Or say you have a slide over app that also supports this, it'll give you the option to choose between 3 different quick note supported things all at once, which is just amazing that it will let you add quick notes to anything that is on your screen that is accepting it. It doesn't kind of box it out to just one thing.
Some of the integrations that you would have expected to be there day one aren't there. So for me, the thing is like Apple Music. Like I want to be able to go into QuickNote and have the same sort of functionality that you have in Safari, where if you do a QuickNote inside of Safari, as you mentioned, there's a button that says add this URL to the note, and you just click it and you're good to go. It would be nice that if you find a song or something that you want to be able to do, you just swipe up, do the QuickNote, have the same button of add this to a note. But strangely, that functionality doesn't exist. And that's sort of a weird one to me, because you would feel that Apple's first-party apps would be supporting all of this stuff day one. And it's weird that some of the third-party apps that you mentioned actually have better support for that than QuickNote.
Yeah. And QuickNote, I mean, it's interesting with Pcalc especially. I don't think there was a way prior to like save calculations within Pcalc, right? It's just kind of a calculator and just drifts off as you do new calculations.
I think that's the use case. So when you said you were using Pcalc with QuickNote, that didn't even occur to me to even do that. So what's that experience like with you? So you're saving calculations from that. How extensive does it show the?
Yeah, so you can open QuickNote after doing a calculation, and you can just say add to QuickNote. And then when you tap on that link, it'll pull up Pcalc with that calculation there. So it provides a way to actually save these calculations and a way to get back to, which is kind of interesting. I don't do a bunch of math stuff, but I just found this kind of a curious use of QuickNotes.
That is a very interesting thing. Again, I avoid math like the plague myself, but being able to do that is a really neat thing. One of the things that I've liked about QuickNote as well is that if you don't want to add an entire URL, if there's just a snippet of a page that interests you, you can go in and highlight that text, add that to QuickNotes, and then if you pull that back up, let's say you go in and you open that URL, it'll open the URL back with the text highlighted. So that, for me, is really a very, very useful feature of why did I bookmark this page in the first place? What was it about this that interested me? Oh yeah, this particular passage here or this particular paragraph is really neat.
Yeah. And if you visit a page or say an app that you've QuickNoted before, or that part of the app, so say you're on Pcalc at that exact calculation still, it'll open that QuickNote window in the bottom right where you can tap on it, and it opens it back up. And that's kind of an interesting thing that kind of makes it more discoverable to get these notes back. And one of my favorite QuickNote updates has been Agenda. It's one of the few apps that I've seen that lets you do multiple links in a single QuickNote.
Oh.
So a lot of these apps, you're only able to add just a single link into a single QuickNote. With Agenda, I can tap on an Agenda note, and then with that QuickNote window open, I can tap add link to QuickNote. And then I can tap on a different Agenda note, and then I can, once again, in that same QuickNote, add a link to QuickNote from there. So you can put 5 or 6 or how many ever you want in a single QuickNote, and maybe that's a way to organize a bunch of notes of things you're working on as just another way to remind you, hey, you should be working on these notes. Or I'm still trying to figure out what the best use case is of making notes about a note. It's kind of a very meta thing, especially with their fantastic widgets that with the whole agenda system of here's your relevant notes you should be keeping an eye on, the agenda notes, which show up in the widget as a way to remind you of this. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to use QuickNote and with these links of sorts.
That is a tough one to sort of wrap one's head around, because the app sort of provides that functionality anyway of things that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And these QuickNotes, I'm not like if you share a QuickNote with somebody that has these links, it won't, of course, link to anything because they don't have your apps installed with your data.
Right.
Yeah.
Though it is worth noting, too, that the QuickNotes, people probably already figured this out, of course, they're stored inside of a folder inside of Notes. And inside of a QuickNote, you can swipe left or right, and you should be able to go between notes.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's also a very handy little feature as well. I'm still trying to, most of the time, my use case for doing notes is if I'm on a website. My wife and I will both have like 1 million tabs open, and there's a reason for having those tabs open. maybe, you're looking at buying this furniture or, exploring a potential vacation in the future or something like that, and being able to put context as to why this thing is open. Sometimes, my wife will use my iPad or whatever, and I'll go in there and I'll see, like, why is this open? Why is that open? And, I go through and I start, closing tabs here and there, but being able to make a contextual note as to why is this something that I'm interested in, and the fact that notes support tags now as well is also a useful thing too. That's also sort of a feature that other note-taking apps like Evernote have supported forever, giving you the ability to do a search based on a topic or a keyword. Because I'm a huge tag fan of being able to go through and put as many descriptors in there about something that's relevant that'll help me find it later when I can't remember the exact thing that I was looking for.
Right. Playing around with the quick note links and stuff it gives you. And once they're in your quick note, it does not appear that you can just copy those links into other places, which is a shame.
You would have to think that that's something they're going to fix at some point when there's an ability that's sort of a universal thing, I guess, that they could share the data across.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was thinking of like, maybe I can. A reason you'd want a quick note to an agenda link is maybe you're quick noting to a different app you also use for, like, say Devon think. You want that kind of data related in some way, and that potentially could be a use.
Yeah, that's a use case that I didn't consider.
And then OmniFocus 3 and 4, which 4 is in beta, also support quick note integration. And, making notes about your to-dos, that's something that you can do within the app itself. But, I mean, perhaps those that are really heavily invested in the Notes app find value in having a more simple app to do, your note-taking about certain things.
Yeah, when it comes to things like OmniFocus, which, again, I used to be an OmniFocus user. That is a fantastic application. When I see things like that, it's kind of like it seems sort of redundant to me. Maybe there's some use case that I just haven't considered that would make it easier to use, but when you have something that actually serves that same purpose, having the notes just always seem kind of redundant to me. I mean, you already have syncing with those applications so that all of that data is consistent across all of your devices, so there's not really that functionality that makes it useful. But
the one thing I'm just thinking of now is perhaps if you're making like here's a bunch of different things you want to have on top of mind, and you want this all in one widget, the Quick Notes widget. If you are linking to OmniFocus, Agenda, and these different things, your Quick Notes widget is a single widget you can have on your iPad home screen to, like, I don't know. It could a little dashboard thing, maybe. I don't know. If you're working
on a project with other people, sometimes you don't want them to be able to see some note that you may want to take in regards to something you're working on as a shared project. Having a quick note, I could see for your own private use. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
So I guess that's possible. I think if we sit here long enough, we could probably come up with the use cases for those. But
yeah, my current use case is I'm in the middle of something. The phone rings. I need to take a quick note, as the name suggests, and it's the quickest way to get to note entry where it saves it. I remember in the past I would often open up Spotlight as just a text field and enter notes about stuff, and that wasn't ideal. So now we have quick notes for that.
My wife uses iMessage to text me things, and I'll get these out of context sort of snippets of text. I'm like, what is this? She's like, something you'll need to remind me about later. So apparently I'm her quick note. But
have you ever texted yourself reminders?
I have in the past. I haven't in quite some time. I would usually, you bring up a good point with the being able to do the invoke the quick note keyboard shortcut. If somebody calls you and you want to write something down. Otherwise, I would tell the person, wait, I'm getting a pencil and paper, as I open the Notes app and started prepared to go ahead and type it up. So obviously that is the most obvious use case. But I've been wanting to see apps that take more advantage of this because I want to note take everything. My notes folder hierarchy is a mess compared to what I did in Evernote, just because I do exactly what you're talking about. Somebody will call me and I'll open up a note, and then I still have the note open, and then I'll type something else that's completely unrelated. I have to get better about this because it's an unmaintainable mess the way that I have it now. But I'm hoping that Quick Note will will fill that need so that I can go through here and clean up a lot of this cruft that I've accumulated over the last, I don't know, decade or so.
Yeah. Yeah, my one hope with Quick Notes is, if Apple won't make a full-fledged Apple Notes app for the watch, at least make a Quick Notes app that's just show me, my Quick Notes, let me add a new Quick Note on the watch. That seems like a good starting point if you're not going to do a full-fledged Notes app for watch.
It is an odd omission when you think about the apps that exist out there that can do this sort of thing, Drafts being a perfect example of something that fills that need, where it seems like it's a no-brainer, especially as the voice recognition on the watch gets better. If you're getting...
And we're getting a keyboard this fall.
I was just about to say the Series 7 is going to make it so that you can type on it as well.
It seems like entering like Wi-Fi passwords and just a lot of things that were impossible to do before will become much easier with that keyboard there.
Probably, but
for independence, Yeah.
But I certainly hate typing Wi-Fi passwords even on the phone, so I can only imagine how that Wi-Fi experience, how typing a password like that on the watch is going to go.
And that's another use where live text. If someone has a router, using your iPhone to grab the live text is going to be great.
That it's funny that you mentioned that because we all have that the router from our ISP or whatever, the cable modem, whatever you need, where you get that, the admin credentials or whatever. And I've had to go back and look into a photo so many times and then manually save that inside of one password. But yeah, that's also a great use case for nerds like us anyway.
So is there anything else, app updates that you've been really digging? I know one that wasn't really a category into itself, but Pixelmator Photo had this wonderful update that came out alongside iPadOS 15. I'm looking up the release notes of what was included here, but basically it improved machine learning, the match color algorithm, the super resolution algorithm, and also took advantage of something that I've not seen other apps do, more memory. So in the release notes, the M1 iPad Pro has more memory that we can take advantage of, so we will. So I'm not sure if that release note says it currently does, or it's just promising, soon we're going to ask for this permission to use more memory and we're going to then. But it's exciting nonetheless that we're going to start getting more memory out of Pixelmator Photo at least.
I noticed that iOS 15 too, again, had the request to use greater amounts of RAM is something that they can actually do. So I don't know if it's actually... RAM. Yeah. Than it used to. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that opens up with things like LumaFusion, which is a great video editor. And I know just sort of a tangent on LumaFusion. It makes me so happy to be able to also use that on my M1 Mac Mini as well. So being able to go between the two with the same app is just it's really neat. Though, strangely enough, I have more memory on my iPad Pro than I do on my Mac One. I mean, my M1 Mac Mini.
That's kind of wild, yeah. But I think it was, up to 12 gigabytes of RAM you're able to use on the 16 gigabyte iPad Pros now?
I think so. There was some entitlement that you had to request, I guess, to be able to do that. So I think... Was it 5 gigabytes that they were saying that is now allowed per application
12?
Without having to... Oh, I know you could go up to 12. But I thought there...
Without
I remember seeing
I believe 5 without,
Yeah, so that... it's becoming more of a desktop class machine. I'm really loving that. So, podcast editing in Ferrite, LumaFusion for video editing... It's a different world now.
Yeah.
So I kind of like
and
that.
I'm very excited for whenever that multi-cam update for LumaFusion hits at some point this year, hopefully.
Yeah, and that's going to be a really nice thing too. So if you're doing interviews or you're doing something where you're filming someone and you're also narrating at the same time, you can really cross-cut and have that stuff just be seamless and perfect.
Yeah, you could have everybody at a wedding be filming the wedding in their seats and then sync like 100 cameras. Probably not that many all at once, but a great number of cameras you'd sync up for live stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Focus mode, I did want to touch on just a little bit. So one of the things that Apple did with focus mode that I know you had previously talked about, but I saw you mentioned that on Twitter as well, was making the groups and then being able to allow people in. So for those that have played with focus mode, one of the problems that you have is that if you're allowing notifications, you have to pick people to allow from instead of allowing, excluding only these. But you got around that with a pretty creative way. That was pretty smart, of creating contact groups and then just using those for the ones you want to get contacts from.
Yeah, and it's boggling that the Contacts app on iPadOS doesn't let you create groups. So you need Cardhop for that.
Again, another fantastic third-party app that actually fills in a sort of a missing part from that. I'm still playing with focus mode. I mean, a lot of my use cases, mostly it's driving or recording or something like that I'm having to do right now. So the use cases aren't as I want to come up with a lot of refinements for these sort of things. I want to come up with a lot of use cases that I can use where I can change the home screen on the fly. On the iPhone, I can think of several contexts where I would use focus mode more so than I would on the iPad. So for like on the iPhone, if you're driving, you don't want to be distracted. If you're, there was another one. If you're traveling, one of the things that I used to do when I traveled is I would put I'd rearrange my home screen before I would leave so that things like my airline, my hotel, my whatever, were all taking up the home screen. So having a context where I can just have a travel context where it's only going to show me those apps that are pertinent for what I'm doing, or a navigation one for when I'm driving, so that that's not a bad case because I'm using CarPlay most of the time for that. Right. But you get where I'm going with that.
On the iPad, if you're into gaming or watching video content, it's nice to have a focus mode for watching movies, and there's Netflix, Hulu, and some of those have widgets, Apple TV, and you could have a gaming one. Here's all your favorite games with whatever widgets pertain to that. Have the PS5 Remote Play app, all of that could be a part of that.
That's a great point too. So one of the biggest problems I've had whenever I watched stuff on the iPad is that the constant life interruptions that would come in that would not happen if I was on the Apple TV, for example. So that's a great use case of being able to say, I don't want to be distracted while I'm killing zombies inside of the Xbox Game Cloud, app, or the PS Remote Play app. So yeah, you've just given me more use cases.
Yeah. So any other app updates or things you want to mention before we wrap it up?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Unlike you, over the summer, I did not run the betas just because my health issues that I've had. I've been in and out of the hospital sort of unpredictably over the summer, so I needed my devices to have no glitches and just be as useful as possible. So I only installed iOS 15 when the release candidate came out. I went ahead and put that on all of my devices, and so I'm a little bit behind the curve compared to some of the folks who've been doing this all summer. So I'm still catching up on a lot of these things. But so far I would say I was initially when iPadOS was announced at iPadOS 15 was announced at WWDC. I felt a little bit underwhelmed. Like, oh, is this all we get? And having used it, I don't feel that way anymore. There was a lot more under the hood than I expected, that I'm starting to take for granted already. So yeah, the widgets being the XL widgets is a good thing. The quick note is a good thing.
Multitasking.
Safari. Yeah, oh my gosh, multitasking. We didn't even talk about that. Being able to use the app shelf, things like that. It's so much better than it was in iOS 14. I mean, yeah, we didn't get all the things that we wanted, but just the stuff that are in 15 are going to be paradigm shifters for a lot of folks that depend on this as their primary computing device, as I think both you and I do. It's where we go for everything. So it's gotten a lot better, and it makes me want to not reach for that Mac a whole lot more than I ever had before. If I could just get the podcasting the way that I want it inside of the iPad, I would ditch the Mac altogether. I do believe. Yeah,
the shelf, it's taken me a bit to learn how to best utilize this, but it really does make multi-window super quick, being able to jump back and forth between multiple windows. You're in a split screen, you can just tap the three dots up top, and then you can tap down below to change windows, and yeah, it's great.
When you have that app switcher where you already have something in split screen, and you can go back and it automatically has that where you left it. I love that so much. That is so super useful, because a lot of times in iOS 14, when you would have to go and try to do split screen, it was either really easy to mess it up, or it was really hard to get it to go away. And a lot of those things have just gone away. It's so much better in the way that they've designed it without having to mimic a desktop, right?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's a different way of doing things, and I know there's a lot of people that have been using computers for decades who are kind of maybe don't take to that as well as they would want to. But once you get used to it, I think this is the way things are going to be going forward. I think the Mac's days are kind of numbered, and I think the way that they are handling these sorts of changes in iOS are just going to end up being the default for most people.
Yeah. Well, with that, Brian, where can folks find what you're up to?
I can be found on Twitter at BrianB, BrianB, and you can also find me on the Infinite Loopback Podcast. Again, because of the health challenges, sometimes the output this summer has been a little bit lower than what I would have liked. But now that things are sort of on the upturn for me, and I'm doing much better than I was before, the output should be a little bit better there. But that's the best place you can find me is both Twitter and my podcast. That podcast, again, is the Infinite Loopback Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get podcasts.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for your time today. It's been great chatting with you again. And we'll have to talk again and do this again at some point in the future.
Absolutely, Tim. Have a good one.
Well, that was my discussion with Brian all about the app updates for iPadOS 15. Make sure to check out his podcast, the Infinite Loopback Podcast. And my thanks again to MagicMind for sponsoring this episode. Please go right now to magicmind.co/iPadPros and use code iPadPros20 for 20% off your order of MagicMind. This drink is packed full of incredible ingredients that improves my focus and is an essential part of my workflow for getting into the flow for producing this podcast. Learn more at magicmind.co/iPadPros. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.